And this time is a panel on China, which we are very happy to present to you. This panel will be conducted in Mandarin. Please use the headphones. Channel 1 is the English translation. For those who want the Chinese translation when other people are speaking in English, that's channel 2. But I'm sure many of you are bilingual, so you don't even need these headphones. Thank you for joining us for lunch. This afternoon, we are very, very pleased to present to you a panel, and strangely enough, almost everybody from Shanghai. So people from Beijing, please don't take offense. Our moderator this evening is Ms. Yang Yanqing. Yanqing in China, if you've been watching China Business News channel, you will see her very often. She has a program, or had a program, called Conversations with Yanqing, and she's the deputy editor of China Business News. On her right is Mr. Liang Xinjun. Xinjun is one of the founders of the Fosun Group of Shanghai. Fosun Group, I've been told, and I'm sure it is absolutely correct, is the largest private conglomerate in China. He is the CEO and vice chairman of the company, and this company has been one of those companies investing in many, many places overseas and also in the United States. On his right is Professor Shen Dingli. Professor Shen is from Fudan University, one of the big universities of China, and he's from the Institute of International Affairs. He writes quite regularly on US-China relations. And on the extreme left of the panel is Professor Zheng Yongnian. Zheng Yongnian, Singapore is very, very fortunate to have him. He's the director of our East Asia Institute at the National University of Singapore. And Yongnian's articles, either in the Singapore Chinese newspaper called Lianhe Zaobao, and also in articles in China, is closely followed as a commentator on Chinese affairs, but from someone outside China, and therefore not caught up in the politics of China, and he's listened to quite often. And let me hand the panel over to Yanqing, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Ambassador and Professor Chang. In order to promote Chinese, so we decided to speak in Chinese purposely. So if needed, please equip the simultaneous interpretation devices.
So for this panel discussion, we will talk about China. It is a very difficult, a very tough topic. For friends from overseas, if you don't understand China a lot, then China looks like a monster without too much transparency. If you look at the Western media, it is described as a dragon, or it is described as a cute panda. So the image of China is also very complicated. But for people who understand China very well, the status quo as well as the challenges faced by China, it is very complicated. I can give you two examples. For example, based on PPP, until the end of this year, based on World Bank and IMF, the estimation of PPP in China will become #1 economic entity in the world. But the average revenue for China, the per capita revenue, is only at the middle tier in China. And the second good example is that until now, China has become the largest country for export and the second largest country for import. So in terms of international trades, China has a very big volume. But for RMB, in terms of exchange rate, it is not fully liberated. A very interesting point is that if we look at the currency of China, the RMB, in the settlement world, RMB has exceeded euros to become the second largest currency in settlement. But in terms of payment around the world, RMB only occupies 1.47%. So to us, it is very complicated. It is intertwined. So in order to explain China clearly, it is very difficult. But fortunately, we have three esteemed panelists born and grown up in China, and they have also had a very good international view. So hopefully today we can give everyone here a good view about China, about the future of China. So maybe we will start from economy. For now, that the overseas countries have a lot of concerns about the development, the economic development in China. If you look at the August data, it doesn't look very good. And when we look at the industrial production, the fixed asset investment, and the power generation, etc., for all these data, it is quite dreadful. And comparing with 2008, we're actually at the lowest level for industry production. And in terms of plant generation, power generation, the power consumption is not very promising as well. And that's why a lot of people are concerned about the 2014 economy. And there are a lot of uncertainties for the development in 2015. So I want to ask Mr. Yang first, because you come from the private sector of China, and you also have a lot of overseas business. From an enterprise point of view, how do you actually judge how do you actually see the economic development in 2014 and 2015? Can we actually implement a 7.5% increase in terms of GDP? Thank you, Milken Institute, for the invitation, and for the panelists here that 4 of us are all from Shanghai, and 3 of them are actually from Fudan University, so I'm just advertising for Fudan. Fudan, Yanqing's question is very good. I always heard the foreign investors' concerns about the China's market situation, but their concerns are only from the point of view of a manufacturing country for China. From the manufacturing point of view, you have to look at the cost issue, the timing issue, the manpower issue, the export issue. So when you look at China, the future is dark. I think this is an existing problem. In order to solve that, of course, we have a little bit oversupply, and we have to reduce the oversupply, maybe through industry integration, or maybe supply export to Southeast Asian countries. And also that includes that for industry production, companies, they can extend their product chains, their product lines, to improve the productivity and to make use of more new technologies such as robotic technologies in their production. And secondly, we have to look from a different point of view. In terms of consumption for China, you will feel that is so bright in the future. The biggest opportunity in the next 6 years would be that for China to become not only the second, maybe the largest consumption country. In terms of middle-class growth, China will have a burst in the number of middle-class people. We have a model. Based on our calculation, after 6 years, the number of middle-class families will be the highest in the world. And the middle-class consumption will be the 12th or 11th in the world. So if you look at industries related to middle class, you will feel that is so bright for the future. And the third aspect is in terms of finance. A lot of disputes on finance, whether the central government should increase the supply for MR and print more money. But my personal view is that our risk-free interest rate is too high. As a result, the reserves from the insurance company as well as the banks is very high. So they cannot actually lower down the interest rate when it comes to loans to the companies or enterprises. So now I think the key is for the central government, the central bank, to lower down the interest rate. And I think that the Central Bank of China is very clever. Through PSL approach, they can actually lower down it. And I think tell you that the ammunition is very sufficient if they want to carry out the PSL way. They have 2 trillion reserves for that. Recently, they have SLF release of 400 billion, and the interest rate is 3.7%. And this is much lower than the risk-free interest rates in the market. So through this approach, I think we can tell everyone that Chinese government do not have to print more money. In the current pool of money, they can actually do a good job. So here I would like to tell all the friends from the Chinese industries, don't expect the government to actually to lower down the interest rate to solve the problem. But in fact, the government is actually doing something to lower down the interest rate. So in the short term, there is a pressure, but in the long term, there is a promising development in terms of the finance industry. And it is good that you can actually eliminate those low productivity industries as well. And for local debts, for Singapore government, for U.S. government, the government debt is very different. And for Chinese government, all the assets such as the property, such as the lands, it all belongs to the government. They can sell it. They can sell it twice. And thirdly, for the state-owned assets, there are about 340 billion. And so they can actually sell the state-owned assets and cover their debts. So I don't think that Chinese government will go bankrupt. But I can see that there is some problem that the local government's debts are actually migrating to the central government debts. And the credits from the private enterprise are migrating from public enterprises. So there's a need for more management in finance. And of course, another problem is the property market. In the next few years, I think, comparing with the last 30 years, the property market will be totally different, completely different. In the next few years, the Chinese property market will reach a balance between supply and demand. After it reaches that point, it takes a few more years to digest the reserves, the inventory. So for property market, there is a risk that for the property developers, they have to adjust their operation mode. They cannot follow the old way. But today, you can see that it's actually the IPO of Alibaba. It's a good chance. But when it comes to internet economy, I want to talk about one more thing. If you look at the whole world in terms of U.S. and China, it is a very different. For China, it is a unique country. It's a consolidated country, one language. So the internet economic scale in China and the U.S. are very huge. But comparing with the U.S., I think China's mobile internet economy is going to be 3 or 4 times larger than the U.S. mobile internet economy. So if you want to invest in Chinese mobile internet economy, do it now. And comparing with the PC internet economy, I think the mobile internet is going to be like more than 10 times of the PC internet economy. So I'm quite confident about the Chinese economy, and I'm not only investing in China, I also invest in international or overseas companies that will benefit from the Chinese economy in the future.
方的面面，那么我给他这个用数据做一点点小的这个。
Thank you so much for your comment, and I would like to have some explanations about PSL and SLF, and these are the terms are quite new. PSL is pledged supplementary loans. It is a medium-term credit tool. It is like LTRO. It is a tool for medium term so that it can suppress the rate a bit. SLF is standby loan facility. This is a short-term interest tool. It is for a short term to provide liquidity for the market. And we talked about that China has sufficient tools to deal with the issues. I would like to supplement, and we have enough tools because we have a large percentage of reserve. It's about 20%, and we have about 2 trillion of reserves. And talking about debt, and the local government and the central government, the total debt is about 40 to 50% of the China's economy, total economy. Compared with other countries, it is still very safe. However, the biggest problem is that our corporate sector, if we add into that, the total debt occupies about 160 the total GDP. So this adding everything together is over 200%. And compared with developed countries, it's not very high, but compared with emerging economies, it's really high. This is why we are very worried. And how can we have a stable growth for long term? Most important is Chinese enterprises should have a very high capacity of profit. Can we, if we can do that, this is not an issue. So I would like to ask you, what do you think about the capability of profit, the profitability? And for the private enterprises, they don't have any problems, and they have endured very high interest rate, and they still can profit. However, this interest rate can be reaching 12% to 20%. That means you have to go surpass 20% of profit. And from 92 funding this company, if we cannot reach such a profit capability, I wouldn't be here today. And I know a lot of other Chinese enterprises can really reach more than 12% of profit. And as far as I know, that a lot of the companies have to endure this high interest rate for a long time, and they can still make a profit. And what I really worry about is state-owned companies. And according to the new reports, we can see that they are only having interest rate of about 1.83 because the party and the state have set out a strategy and said these state-owned companies have to really restructure and to have more competitiveness. And so this to say that our private enterprises, the situation is very optimistic. I want to ask Professor Chen and Professor Shen, between 2014 to 2015, what is the growth rate and what is the engine behind it? Give me just 1 minute. From the policy point of view, we need 2 to 3 years of adjustment, because in the past we have double-digit growth for many years, and now we have reached medium speed growth. And it's about 6 to 8%, 6 to 7%. This will be sufficient. However, I think what is precious is this terms of leaders, they have accepted the lower GDP growth. Because in the past, the government really pushed forward and the high growth, high GDP growth. However, now they realize that they have to do a restructuring, and this takes time. China, if we have 6 to 7% of growth, we can have a sustainable growth for 10 to 15 years. So what is the engine behind it? And I think that Mr. Liang says very well. And this term of leaders, they did 2 very good things. First is they have stopped the expansion of state-owned companies. Secondly is they have stopped the debt growth. And other than the GDP growth, the figure is not so great. And every other index has gone up, for example, employment, consumptions, and also restructuring. of the systems, and we are, according to the third plenum, we are going to have a mixed economy. And a mixed economy really is more for the private enterprises. And because a lot of the state-owned companies have to be privatized. And also, our financial situation is very sound. And in many, many years forward, and we can see the central government financial situation is very solid. However, the local government may have some problems, but the central government gives them pressure to reform. For example, in Shanghai, a lot of the government enterprises are sold to private companies, and Shenzhen is doing the same. So from the central government point of view, and you don't see a lot of reforms, but from the local view, you can see a lot of the reforms going on. And I believe that manufacturing is still the engine, and a lot of the because of the manufacturing, and we don't have a lot of our own technological advancement. However, we see a lot of improvement. For example, Xiaomi mobile phone. This is our own domestic technology, and the market share has surpassed that of Samsung. And Speed Rail is operating in Turkey, and we also got in Nigeria, and we have 1,500 kilometers, and in Kenya 500 kilometers, and we also have then 10,000 kilometers in China, and this is the world top operation, even though technological level may be not surpassing Japan. However, the value is much better. And we believe this is going to expand, and we want to get Americans FAA. So we are going to have ABC, Airbus, and Boeing, and China Commercial, and we are going to really be a very different situation from selling our shirts to technology. This is through innovation, and also our supercomputer, and number one and number two, and the highest speed, and the 500 largest and most fast PC 78 are in China. And we believe we have a lot of competitiveness in this area, from manufacturing to innovation and to creation. And a lot of our technology can benefit the world, and we have a lot of opportunities, and we believe Chinese people are very, very smart.
So slowly that we can see that China has become a large innovative country, and this brought more promises and hopes for us. I want to add one more thing for weapon. 25 years ago, that U.S. is having embargo for Chinese armories, but now the alliances of U.S. like Turkey, they are importing the Chinese armories in terms of the open beating of the missiles. That Chinese missiles are actually exceeding the U.S. Patriot to be purchased by Turkey. I want to add one more thing, that Professor Shen has. I totally agree with him that he has done a good view. For Asian countries like Japan, like the 4 little dragons in Asia, it is accumulation process. When they accumulate to a certain level, at the beginning it is manufacturing, but at later it will come to innovation. For China, when China is starting to sell armory weapons of outside of Asia, what do you think? Would people be worried about that? I think for the peaceful development, for the world peace, that we have to look at it cautiously. Just now, we talk about the anti-air attack weapon. This is not actually for wars. It's anti-air attack. So before we talk about that, let's talk more about the domestic markets in China. Now, China has been going through two very important things, and the foreign observers as well as investors are also very concerned about. The first is anti-corruption, and you have seen that China now has been going through a historical high level of anti-corruption, and this is actually suppressing the economic development, which causes concern. And the second is the antitrust investigation. And we're also feeling that antitrust investigation is getting more and more severe, and FDI is getting lower and lower, and foreign investors are probably thinking that the antitrust and anti-corruption for Chinese market in the short term is not a good thing. So maybe from Professor Shen and Professor Zheng's point of view, can you do some have some comments first, and then Mr. Liang will comment at last. From anti-corruption's point of view, if you understand President Xi's anti-corruption activities, you have to look at it from the ideology of social reform. The aim of the anti-corruption is on Chinese Communist parties, and you have to have a different view of that. I have actually published a book that the Chinese Communist Party as a organizational emperor. So this means that compared with the People's Action Party in Singapore, that the Chinese Communist Party's power is more like the emperor's power in the past. And for Chinese Communist Party, they need to look at in long term, what is the planning like in the next 5 years or 10 years? President Xi, what he was doing, why he's carrying out these large-scale anti-corruption activities, because what he considers is not just within his 2 terms he's talking about, or he's considering about 30 years from now. In the past, we know that President Mao, the Chairman Mao, has 30 years of power, and then Mr. Deng has another 30 years. And for now, President Xi has another 30 years of planning, and that is why he has to carry out this anti-corruption campaign. And you can see that comparing with the past anti-corruption campaigns, in the past is only investigate on those corrupted officials. But now, if you look at the campaign, it is actually a restructuring of the political systems in China. Just like any post-communist societies, from planned economy to market-driven economy, there are many monopolies coming out from China. Just like Ukraine and Russia or the Soviet Union in the past. After the 18th People's Congress, a lot of economic monopolists are becoming the political monopolists, and this will in turn affect the productivity and the economy of China. And so this kind of anti-corruption is actually against the transformation from economic monopolies to political monopolies, and that is why you could understand why it is Zhou Yongkang. So, of course, people were worried about that this large-scale anti-corruption campaign will last or not. But I think this is an intermediate task. Mr. Wang, the Vice Premier Wang, has mentioned that this anti-corruption will last at least for another 5 years, and many political families are actually getting gains from their political power. But I think it's okay. But if you are earning the money and then you use it for your political purposes, then it's dangerous. So for these political monopolists, they in the false plenum every year, they have to discuss about how to build a more complete system. I think for President Xi, I admire him very much, because for President Xi, it is very different task now. For Chairman Mao, he's building a new China to liberate China, and then for Mr. Deng, he's reforming the economic system. But for President Xi, he's reforming the political system and then to build a new system. And this is very difficult. And at least mentally, he has to reach that goal. And I think the approach that he has adopted maybe will see some results. Just now you mentioned about for anti-corruption, is there any way for us to use a systematic approach to carry out? But from our observations, it has not been institutionalized. So in the foreseeable future, can you see any progress, especially in the fourth plenum? Do you see any progress to be made in the anti-corruption system? 2 weeks ago, I visited the Chinese Discipline Committee, Communist Party Discipline Committee, and I felt that now the situation has changed. If previously for anti-corruption, there are a lot more anti-corruption institutions in China than other countries. For Hong Kong, for Singapore, it is a very small country. It is very few. There are very few anti-corruption institutions, but in China there are many. Even for university level or company level, there are anti-corruption committees and institutions. In Singapore, there is anti-corruption authority, and then in Hong Kong it's the same, but you need to build a central anti-corruption committee. And comparing with the previous system construction, we do not have to depend on the system because it is created by people. When there are so many corrupted officials are trying to build a system or a mechanism that can actually cleans out the system, it is very hard, because all these anti-corruption officials, they are corrupted themselves. So if you look at Wang Qishan's system, it is very good, but if you look at the officials, they are still very corrupted. President Xi has used a new term. It is called political ecology, ecosystem, political ecosystem. So if you have a good political ecosystem, then you can actually do a good job in anti-corruption. Whether President Xi is learning from Chairman Mao, I don't know. I don't think he's pretending to be Chairman Mao, because he's not. And maybe he wants to copy Jiang Jingguo in Taiwan or Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore. And I think that the political ecosystem is very similar. But for economic ecosystem, antitrust, do you have any comment? I think this is a factual existence, and this is due to the pursuit of happiness and wealth by human beings. It is a good thing, but when it comes to monopoly, it is very dangerous. Of course, we need to have technical innovation and sustainable consumption. And that is why we're promoting sustainable economy. But for China, you can see a lot of SOEs, they are monopoly. When they get loans from the banks, they don't have any risk. And if it is a bad debt, the bank will say, hey, I will just give it to you. No worry. But when they earn the money, they fix the pricing. For example, the coal mines, they are all dominated by the state-owned enterprises. And for private enterprises, they have no power to fix the price for coals. And 20 years ago, when I was in Princeton, I've seen the splitting of Bell company. Because Bell is so profitable, but U.S. doesn't want Bell to be the #1 in the world. So they want to weaken Bell, and they want Dell to provide cheap products to benefit the U.S. citizens. And that's why they split Dell into multiple companies. And this action has benefited all the people in the U.S. And of course, this will create more competition, and then you will bring more new innovative companies. And I think from overseas that many antitrust are actually against the multinationals. So for multinationals, I think for these enterprises, they have to pursue profit, of course. But for the local laws, how do they regulate? In the past, there are antitrust. But why now people are so worried about it? I think how to integrate these enterprises, whether it is reasonable or not. I have three views. First, for all these MNCs, all the antitrust companies, they are all taking for granted all the fines. You know, they will not fight against, they will not appeal against the government. As long as they can make money out of it, they are fine. And of course, they don't feel comfortable with that, so they went back to the U.S. and talked to the U.S. Department of Commerce, and then President Obama will come to China to talk with the Chinese government. But at least they cannot say in front of Chinese government face to say you're wrong, you can't do this. And secondly, our antitrust on Chinese enterprise is like 10 times more than the MNCs. For Chinese, it's probably 9 enterprises got antitrust, and then for the U.S. or multinationals, only 1. So we can tell people that when but the transparency is not that high. So my suggestion is that we have to tell the people that when we do antitrust to the local Chinese enterprises, we have to report it. We have to make it transparent. And secondly, when we investigate the MNCs, if it is true that they are at a monopoly position, the fines can be billions of RMB. And when it is reported to NDRC, we need them to tell the people that why we're doing this. And when the MNCs are coming to us to say, can you tell me why we're doing this, why we are doing the investigation, we should tell them. We should spend some time with them to consult with them rather than what we are doing to the media to tell them, no, we can't tell you anything.
And what we have seen, and that a lot of the luxurious consumptions, but we can see that the market has declined, and a lot of people say this is because of this anti-corruption campaign. I don't think it's quite factual. It has a lot of the impact is from the anti-government or public funds to purchase these luxurious goods. And I believe that we still need 1 year or a year and a half to absorb this issue. And then we will go back to this normal market growth, which will be about 18%. And for those who are optimistic about middle-class consumption in China, this is a very good time. Talking about anti-monopoly, and in the past, we talk about centralization, and because we are very fragmented, so we cannot really anti-monopoly. We should really organize big companies. This is my opinion. And before we have a Q&A, we want to ask the last question about China. This question is about China in Asia and in the world, what kind of a role China should play. And I believe that the new leaders have not really come to a conclusion of that. And we can see in the South China Sea, we have a lot of disputes, and also Sino and Japan relationship has a lot of tension. And President Xi is in India. However, we can see a lot of territorial tension. And we talk about Americans' pivot to Asia. And under the backdrop, how can China treat our neighbors? And how can China and the USA establish a relationship and to become a very responsible company? This is a very large challenge to our leaders. I would like to first ask Professor Shen, what kind of role China should play? My dream are two. First is collaborate. We collaborate together. And President Xi gave a talk in India and said China and India should together become a core for the development of Asia, not just China as the leader. India should also be a leader. So this is for the first time for the India to hear that China invites them to be the leader. First is cooperate. Second is to leading. And you cannot be afraid of to lead. And we cannot really object to that. And if USA's leadership has led to Japan's military expansion, limit Japan's military expansion, we think it's very good. We should really welcome that. And we believe that Americans' presence in Asia have a lot of active roles. And why do Singapore people all believe that? And however, Chinese people do not believe that. And we have to look at that and to really understand that. For example, U.S.'s power really contain North Korea, and they would not really fight South Korea. In 92, South Korea and China established a relationship, and the president and then Premier Wen Jiabao went to South Korea, and President Xi went to South Korea. And we believe, and all these agreements are legal, and we should really protect that. If North Korea are going to be insisting on doing these illegal actions, and China will oppose that. This is from China that have really progressed to have become a cooperator with a lot of the international communities. And also, however, we have also cooperated with the USA. For example, the Iraqi war, we really opposed that. However, now we should have an open mind and to understand the USA. And for example, its crackdown of ISIS. If Iraq's government accepts that, if the UN Security Council wants that, and we should accept that. So China has seen its interest very clearly. And so we have to really cooperate with the USA. And we can have many ways of doing that. For example, we can train Iraq's armed force and the police force. And when USA withdraw from Afghanistan, we can also go in to train them. So it's not enough for USA one leader, and the USA needs a lot of other collaborators. So President Obama has said that also USA need more collaborators, and we are really be on the same bus with the USA. As we are become stronger, we have to work harder. For example, in East China Sea and the South China Sea, and a lot of people are very worried. And yesterday, we see that President Xi went to India, and we can see some military conflicts there. And in China, we have a centralized country, and we have never really understood what is the borderline. And we have to understand the history in the Opium War, and because of the UK's help of India, and they have a new borderline. So, and then the Tibetan government signed agreement with India, and then the Chinese government opposed that. And during the Korean War, and there was more disputes, and we can negotiate on that, but we cannot use military force to force anybody and to really force what happened in the history to China. And we need to negotiate between the leaders of the two countries, and we are negotiating on the borderline. And India has its own views, and they believe that if China goes beyond the line that they have set up, it belongs to invasion. However, China doesn't accept that. So we have to understand each other. We have to really accept why they criticize us, and why when they go past our line, we are unhappy with. So we should really have the sensibility and draw a clear line, and we should have our own sensibility, and we are both at the right or wrong. We should really have a clear line. We should set up this line so that we won't make any mistakes. And let's please speed up this work so that we won't have any conflicts in the future. And the South China Sea is the same issue. China never said this all belonged to China. However, in Kuomintang time, they have a very unclear line. And because we have give up 2 points, and there's never been a very clear explanation, and everybody has their own interpretations. However, I believe that the line belongs to China's side. The island should belong to China. Other than that, is not. However, Chinese government doesn't accept that. They believe that from the traditional point of view, all the traditional island belong to China. However, and we talk about the 200 miles of the island belong to another country, and that the country can go there and to fish. However, China believe that they should have an announcement and should have a legal document to set up that. That's why a lot of the countries think that China has go against the international law. So you can see a lot of disputes, and we have to negotiate to resolve all these issues.
But I think they also think this is wrong. But Chinese government says that 17 years ago and 17 years ago until 1997, and the Philippines has not actually said this is yours. And then when Philippines sent army to occupy this few islands, it is actually attack, or it is intrusion into our sovereign rights. And because Philippines is good at publicity, about propagation, and they can say this is my island, and the Chinese government is not good at publicizing to say this is my. But at least you should actually have a good communication that if you take my island, we say, okay, it's fine. But in terms of the conflict resolution, that the Chinese government felt that I don't actually have to explain this is my island. And then the other country or another country will feel that no, you didn't react. There is U.S. behind us, and we can't say anything. And so now we actually are in need of China to step. As a large country, I can tell you that I give this island to you, but I need to tell the world that I'm giving it to you. And I think we also need the Chinese government needs to rise up like this, and the neighbors of China can understand this. I think maybe next time when we talk about the border issues, we'll invite Prof. Chen to give us more detailed understanding about it. Probably Prof. Zheng can tell us more about the Chinese views on. I think it is very normal that when China is growing big,
neighboring countries.
All the neighboring countries are pretty small. Just now, Prof. Chen has mentioned that China will have to be more generous. If we look at the China as a regional large country or a global large country, I think there's one thing we have to emphasize, that China has to learn to become a large country. Sorry, because of the time limit, we cannot band you talk. I think in the next 15 to 20 years, it is very hard for China to rise up. I don't think there is a little bit big problem on the South China Sea. I think when it comes to Philippines and Vietnam, is more on the resources that they wanted, but this is more of an overplay on the South China Sea. Rather than it's an international conflict. It's not an international conflict. So from my point of view, it won't affect our economic development. I think at last, maybe we can give some time to the audience here to raise some questions for our discussion. We have a few minutes to ask for 1 to 2 questions, maybe. Anybody has question, please raise up your hand. I think everybody's keeping a low profile. So let me ask 1 or 2 questions to wrap it up. Just now we mentioned that China's position in the world, I think for Fosun Group, they have done very interesting thing. They have purchased JP Morgan building in the US, in New York. And this is a representation of the golden times of the US. Many people understand it that when the Japanese company bought the Rockefeller building, the U.S. finance industry is getting a lot of attention. But I think for us, J.P. Morgan should be happy because we bought their building. We give them a lot of money. The per square feet price is $3,500. The net ROI is around 6.7%. And for us, because we have hold a lot of insurance assets, and we have 20 billion reinvestable insured assets. So we want to find some assets that are having a steady 6%, at least a 6% return. So this is not something that we want to buy because of our nationality mentality, but simply because of the ROI, the high ROI. And for the overseas investment, a lot of people do not want to talk about it. I'm happy, please do not talk about it. But from my point of view, I would like to buy some US or Japanese or some Southeast Asian companies to help them benefit from the Chinese market with more rising middle-class families. When we keep a low profile and help these companies to come into Chinese market to grow their market share in China, then this is actually a good leverage on the global resources in the Chinese market. And this is a very good approach for us to expand inwards into China. I think as a wrap up, I think I want to ask one question like this. Last year, at the end of last year, in the third plenum, there's a blueprint for 2020 in terms of economy, social, and development. What do you think by 2020? What is the vision that you want China to achieve? Starting from Prof. Chen. I have 2 visions. First, for economic scale, we want to reach #1 in the world. Not PPP, but not the nominal one. PPP maybe this year will become. We may not be able to achieve that, but we will have to sustain our development in order to achieve that. I think sustainability is the foremost important thing. Secondly, I think the complete civilization, political civilization, economic civilization come onto the agenda of the government. I expect 2020. In 2020, Chinese consumer market or consumption market can become #1 in the world, especially for the middle class. Consumption power can reach #1 in the world. And secondly, I would expect Chinese companies can have more better resource allocation in the world, not just the Chinese companies in Chinese market, but more in overseas market. If we put all the bets in China, in long term, there is still risk in there. For Prof. Zheng, I have only one wish, like Mr. Liang has mentioned. Until 2020, the Chinese middle class can reach about 70% of the population. Because for peace, for legal system, for development, without this middle class, you cannot achieve it. Thank you very much. I think by 2020, we hope to achieve all these visions. And we wish good luck to China. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next sessions are breakouts and will begin at 2:20. Celebrating and selling to the growing middle class will take place in this room. The prognosis for health innovation will take place in Patterson on the 6th floor. Long-term impact will take place next door in the Crescent Ballroom. Please note the room change. Thank you.